Andra, Barker-Vormawor Echo Appointment Committee, no, and Mamene Orua Vitus Azeem, any Nkomo Emra. He is an anti-corruption campaigner. Na Adope. Let me speak to him. Mr. Vitus Azeem, if you can hear me, good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
Trust you're doing well.
I'm doing well.
Very well. So once again, thank you very much for your time with us. We are grateful you joined us this morning. But first of all, yesterday, Barker-Vormawor appeared before the appointment committee to basically substantiate some level of allegations made against the appointment committee. It turned out that, there was no evidence to buttress whichever claims he made. Now, we've had the opportunity of listening to former members of the same committee, who have done some level of work in time past. Let me hear you and then your views as well on this particular development and as to how we can curb some of these allegations, plus the many more perceptions that Ghanaians are holding about the work of the committee.
Well, you see, what he said was just what is a general perception out there. Many people have that perception, although nobody has voiced it out until he did. But Parliament, they say, is an august body. And when you put something like that on Facebook, it could be interpreted to mean that you want to embarrass the House. And so I think that's why they invited him to appear and provide evidence. But you see,
Kessben.
Corruption in Ghana, when it comes to one aspect of it, bribery, is that the giver and the receiver are both guilty. So it's not easy to provide evidence of corruption.
Okay.
If neither of them reported at the time of the incident and when we read. So Vormawor couldn't have given any hard evidence because none of the key players, if it happened, would have been willing to come forward and say, yes, I was the one who offered the gift. And for the one who received the gift card, I say, yes, I received the gift. Besides, in the same way, bribery is sometimes given through agents. So even if some money was passed through an agent to the vetting committee member or members, you can still not pinpoint any of them accusing the person of having taken the money. He would definitely deny. So it was a difficult task for Vormawor. And I think the best way out was to say you are sorry. But like the vetting committee said, if he had gone to any of the people listed, our institution listed under the Whistleblower Act, and made the report, then it could have been investigated by the appropriate institution under that law. Unfortunately, he didn't do that. You see, but it's not just him alone. Many people have discussed this on Facebook. And it's not just the ninth parliament that we are talking about. For a long time, this perception is out there. But some may not have any grounds.
Yes, the question will also be that, how do we substantiate some of these claims? Generally, if these are the perceptions of Ghanaians, and the fact that people will not have the real hard evidence to buttress whichever claims they make, then forever the corruption tag is still going to remain like this, because until you are able to prove with, hard documented evidence, people will always go through these processes and then at the end of the day go scot-free because it will still remain a perception.
Yeah, so I've said that you blow the whistle to an appropriate person.
Kessben.
And then that person will refer the matter to an appropriate institution to investigate. If that person is investigating, you can have, for example, witnesses being compelled to appear and testify on oath. Then the truth will come out. Otherwise, if you are a regional coordinating director, in the first place, you're a public servant, who has sworn an oath of secrecy. So even if you were asked to pay monies to the committee, you will not be bold enough to come forward and say, yes, I paid the money to this particular person.
But
that's the problem.
Yes, in your line of duty, I mean, have you ever come across any of such situations where, I mean, we make the allegations, we blow the whistle to the appropriate institutions for further investigations, and then by their own assurances, I mean, they've gone through or conducted the investigation and then come out with a substantive report, I mean, giving us the details of whether or not, I mean, those allegations were true. Now, the question again will remain. We've had several instances in this country where even upon approval of MMDCs, we are told that such candidates pay monies to assembly members before they endorse them. Like was last 4 years or a few years ago, you heard some of such nominees, I mean, who claimed they paid certain amounts. And even up to today, the Office of the Special Prosecutor has not been able to give us that adequate report that will allow the entire nation to know whether or not, I mean, there was some level of truth in those perceptions. So, I mean, how do we deal with some of these things substantially, knowing very well that presumably it occurs, I mean, on a regular basis?
It's very difficult to deal with it substantially because both parties are involved or are affected. For example, the vetting committee is made up of members from both parties. Each of the committees in Parliament are made up of people from two separate parties. And so, even if it involves one party at a time, they may not be ready to pursue it. And as I said, and I'll say again, you report to the appropriate institution or person listed under the Whistleblower Act. Then they can start an investigation. They can compel witnesses to appear and swear on oath before they provide evidence. That's the only way I think we can.
But generally, were you impressed with the performance of the committee and the manner in which they handled Vormawor yesterday?
See, my problem is the committee was the accused person. And they constituted themselves into a court of law to investigate it, or is it to prosecute him?
Or an allegation concerning the same committee.
Yes.
So more or less they were the same judges in their own court.
Yeah, that was inappropriate. But Parliament has been doing this since, holding people before the Privileged Committee of Parliament, people who are not parliamentarians. And that is not fair. There's no fair play in it, and they need to change. If they want to actually cleanse their image of such allegations in the future, they need to always refer the matter to an appropriate body, independent of of Parliament or at least the committee to investigate.
Now, on the other hand, before I just wrap up with you, the former chairman to the same committee, I mean the appointment committee, former member of Parliament for Bekwai and former deputy first speaker of Parliament, Joseph Osei-Wusu, last night is on record to have said that to a far extent, nobody can induce the appointment committee in terms of how they do their work. But in previous years, what the practice has been is the fact that, I mean, the chief of staff used to give them some amount of money after they have done their work as a committee. Now, a lot of people are raising concerns as to why the committee will be remunerated after a work done by the chief of staff. That should not be the normal practice. So, to a far extent, that is some level of inducement on the part of the chief of staff and then on the part of the committee. And this is coming from a former chairperson of that same committee who have been, I mean, allegedly claimed that they take bribes to approve some of these nominees who appear before them. Now, how do you respond to this assertion? Because he spoke on PM Express last night on Joy News.
Yes, you see, that's why I've said that the impression is out there And if the chief of staff can do that, then it's more or less institutionalizing that practice. Because that's the work of parliamentarians. We've elected them to sit there and perform certain duties spelled out in the Constitution. And vetting nominees of the president are part of that work. If there's a need to pay the overtime, it has to be Parliament.
Okay.
From their budget and not from the chief of staff. You see, and especially when at the end of the day, virtually every nominee scales through. Even with the case of the last vetting, when certain people were tapped and their vetting held on to, later when they all came and they were all allowed.
Yes.
So why won't people just believe and accuse the government of being complicit in this matter?
But should that really be the practice where you have a chief of staff donating to this particular committee upon the approval of the nominees?
But that's what I've just said. If the chief of staff does that, he or she is institutionalizing this practice, which is corruption.
Okay.
What is the reason for paying that money? For doing a good job, approving all his president's ministers. Is that why? Then there's no point to have a vetting committee. Parliament should just sit on the floor of the house and say, oh, we've passed all of them. It's from the president, especially when this government has a good majority in Parliament. But you still go through all this, and yet people find it necessary to influence. You know, there was one case where I don't remember the year, when it was alleged that monies were given to the committee by, some said a businessman, some said a foreigner, and that kind of thing.
Yes, I remember.
The investigators saw some of the parliamentarians that came out to testify. But it ended nowhere. So how can we? Parliament has oversight responsibility over the executive. So if the executive is engaged in something that is untoward, that can be described as corruption or at least bribery, then how are they able to monitor other people? And to pass effective laws to protect the public purse? So definitely it's wrong.
Very well. Mr. Azeem, I'm grateful for your time this morning. Once again, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. Okay. Bye.
Thank you. That is Vitus Azeem, anti-corruption campaigner, speaking to us. And Barker-Vormawor appeared before the appointment committee. The outcome of it, but